Alec watched the view outside his cabin window, the starlight glinting off the sleek hull of the Zathri station ahead. He'd never seen anything quite like it before. A massive construct that resembled a floating crystal city, spinning slowly against the endless black of space. He took a deep breath and adjusted the collar of his formal jacket. His assignment wasn't just to represent humanity in the ongoing dialogue with the Zathri. It was to prove that humans could be more than just what the galaxy whispered about them. Brash, reckless, unpredictable. They needed to see something else in him, something worth trusting. Before he had time to dwell on it, the intercom chimed. "Alec, we're 10 minutes from docking," said the calm, steady voice of Yarrick, his communications officer. "Zathri delegation is ready to receive you." Alec thumbed the comm switch on his console. "Thanks, Yarrick. I'll meet you in the airlock." Yarrick was more than just an officer. The two had trained together, shared countless late nights poring over Zathri culture files. And now, they were stepping into the unknown as a team. Alec always felt better with Yarrick nearby. His friend had a knack for keeping things grounded, for making the abstract and overwhelming seem manageable. The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon Alec and Yarrick stood before the massive airlock doors of the Zathri station. They exchanged a glance. Jarrek's expression was unreadable, as always, but Alec saw the slight nod of reassurance. It was time. When the airlock hissed open, Alec's breath caught in his throat. The interior of the station was alive with shimmering colors. Tall, flowing structures that seemed to be crafted from living crystal towered around them, refracting light in every direction. Soft ambient sounds, chimes, a faint hum like the wind through glass, filled the air. A figure approached, flanked by two others who seemed more like ceremonial guards than officials. The central figure stepped forward, her steps deliberate and graceful. She was Zathri, and though Alec had seen images before, they didn't prepare him for the reality. Her form was humanoid, her translucent skin glowing faintly as though a fire burned softly within. Her eyes were striking, deep amber pools that seemed to see everything at once. "Welcome to Keithel Station," she said, her voice a melodic echo. "I am Ileana, your appointed guide and liaison." Alec nodded, willing himself to appear composed. "Thank you, Ileana. I'm Alec. This is Yarrick, my communications officer." Yarrick gave a polite nod, his sharp blue eyes taking in the surroundings without a hint of awe. "It's an honor to be here." Ileana inclined her head. "We will begin with a tour, if that suits you. Keithel Station is designed to reflect the harmony of our people, and it is my hope you will find it illuminating." "Lead the way," Alec said, gesturing politely. He fell into step beside her, with Yarrick a half-step behind. The tour was mesmerizing. Ileana led them through corridors of refractive crystal, past chambers that resonated with low, harmonious vibrations. She explained how each area of the station served a purpose: contemplation, assembly, celebration. The Zathri didn't separate their spaces into the stark functionality of human design. Everything was interconnected, every chamber a part of a larger whole. It felt alive, as though the station itself had a soul. Yarrick kept his comments sparse but thoughtful, his questions precise. "How do you maintain such structural integrity in vacuum?" he asked at one point, studying a lattice of light that served as both wall and ceiling. "The crystals grow naturally in response to our presence," Ileana replied, her voice calm. "They are attuned to our emotions and needs. Stability is not imposed, it is achieved through balance." Alec, less technically inclined, focused on the people they passed. He observed Zathri families walking together, their glowing forms creating subtle auras of light. Children, if that's what they were, ran ahead, their laughter mingling with the soft ambient hum. Everywhere there was a sense of quiet harmony. Alec had never seen anything like it on Earth or any human colony. When they reached the central hall, a vast chamber that seemed to float in a sphere of pure light, Ileana paused and turned to them. "This is our gathering place," she said. "Here, our leaders deliberate, our artists perform, our citizens share their voices." "It's stunning," Alec said honestly. He glanced at Yarrick. "What do you think?" Yarrick raised an eyebrow. "Impressive. Makes our council chambers look a bit primitive." Ileana regarded them both, her expression calm but curious. "And how do you resolve differences, Alec? Among your people?" Alec hesitated. "We debate. We compromise. Sometimes we argue more than we should, but it's a process. Process, she repeated softly. For us, it is more of a resonance, an alignment of thoughts and emotions. When we are truly connected, there is no need to debate. The path becomes clear. Yarrick gave a dry chuckle. Wish it worked that way for humans. We're not exactly known for our perfect harmony. Ileana tilted her head slightly as if studying him. Perhaps that is your strength. The struggle, the effort can produce something unique, something unexpected. Alec caught Yarrick's eye and saw a faint smirk. Despite his usual stoicism, Yarrick appreciated sharp insight when he heard it. The tour continued, winding through chambers that became more private and subdued. Ileana led them to a space where soft cushions were arranged around a low crystalline table. We can rest here for a moment, she said. You've traveled far. Much appreciated, Alec said, taking a seat. Yarrick settled down beside him, his posture as straight as ever. Ileana seated herself opposite them, folding her hands in her lap. Tell me, Alec, what does your species hope to achieve by coming here? Alec leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. We want to understand, to learn. We know we're new on the galactic stage and we're not perfect, but we want to find common ground, to share knowledge, and hopefully, build something meaningful together. Ileana studied him, her amber eyes searching. And you, Yarrick? She asked. Do you share this view? Yarrick hesitated, then nodded. It's why we're here, to listen as much as we talk, to learn as much as we teach. A faint smile touched Ileana's lips. Your willingness to listen may serve you well. It is rare among species who reach out into the stars. Alec and Yarrick exchanged a glance. There was an understanding between them, a recognition that this was the kind of dialogue they'd hoped for. It wasn't just about grand gestures or formalities. It was about these small, honest exchanges. As they finished their discussion and rose to continue the tour, Alec felt something shift. Ileana wasn't just a guide. She was a bridge, a chance to connect in a way that couldn't be scripted. And while Alec didn't know where this path would lead, he felt certain it was a step worth taking. Alec stood on the observation deck of Keithel Station, staring out at the endless stars that framed the dark void. Beside him, Yarrick leaned on the railing, silently taking in the view. Alec felt a small sense of relief. Whatever differences existed between their species, this moment, gazing out at the same galaxy, was something they all shared. This place is, well, it's hard to describe, Yarrick said at last, his voice low. It feels alive in a way that's different from anything I've seen. Alec nodded. It's like every inch of it was grown rather than built. The Zathri think so differently, even in the way they create their environments. No straight lines. No harsh angles. Yarrick glanced sideways at him. You sound like you admire them. I do, in a way, Alec admitted. They've built something harmonious without forcing it. It's not perfect, but it's impressive. Before Yarrick could respond, Ileana entered the observation deck, her steps silent on the crystalline floor. Alec, Yarrick, I thought you might enjoy seeing one of our cultural spaces next. A place where you can experience the art of our people. Yarrick straightened up, adjusting his jacket. Lead the way, Ileana gestured, and the three of them walked through a long corridor that shimmered with faint hues of blue and green. They stepped into a vast, open hall where crystalline sculptures floated in midair, shifting and refracting light like slow-moving clouds of glass. Soft tones played in the background, chimes, faint melodies, and something that resembled the gentle rustling of leaves. Alec tilted his head, fascinated. Are those living structures? Not in the way you understand life, Ileana replied. They resonate with the emotional patterns of those who created them. Every piece reflects the thoughts and feelings that shaped it. When you stand near them, they may shift subtly to match your presence. Yarrick reached out toward one of the sculptures, his fingers stopping a few inches from its surface. The light refracted differently, shimmering in a deeper hue. So they adapt to whoever's around? Exactly, Ileana said. Our artists are not just creators. They are conduits. The art and the viewer are connected. Alec couldn't help but smile. It's beautiful. But what happens if someone with darker emotions comes through? Then the structures will reflect that too, she said, her voice thoughtful. We do not see it as a flaw. It is a reminder that all emotions have their place. Yarrick withdrew his hand and crossed his arms. Interesting approach. We usually try to bury our less pleasant feelings. Perhaps that is why we rarely see your kind create in this way, Ileana said. Her tone wasn't unkind, but it carried a note of quiet curiosity. What inspires your people, then? Stories, mostly, Alex said. We have painters and sculptors, sure, but a lot of our culture comes from the stories we tell, whether in books, films, or just around the dinner table. It's a way of making sense of everything, even the messy parts. Stories, Ileana repeated, her gaze lingering on Alec. That explains much. Yarrick glanced at her. What do you mean? You speak often of reaching for understanding, she said. It seems you try to create a narrative out of your experiences. You weave meaning from chaos. Alec felt himself nodding. Yeah, that sounds about right. We're always looking for a way to connect the dots. The conversation paused as they walked through another section of the hall. Here, the sculptures gave way to cascading streams of light that formed shifting patterns on the floor. Alec noticed that Ileana's pace had slowed, her expression more pensive. What is it? He asked, stepping closer. She turned slightly toward him. I find it curious, this idea of seeking meaning in the chaos. We Zathri often strive for balance, for alignment. We do not think of our lives as stories, but rather as points on a continuum. To hear you speak of your struggles, your victories, even your failures as parts of a narrative, it is a different perspective. Not necessarily better or worse, Yarrick said, leaning casually against a column. Just different. Different indeed, Ileana said. But I wonder, does it bring you comfort? Alec considered this. It does. Even when things don't make sense at first, knowing that it could fit into a larger story helps us move forward. It gives us a reason to keep trying. And what if the story has no clear ending? She asked. What if it remains unresolved? Then we find meaning in the journey itself, Yarrick said, surprising Alec with the weight of his response. Not everything has to be tied up in a neat little bow. Ileana's amber eyes lingered on Yarrick for a moment, then shifted back to Alec. You are more complex than I expected. Alec chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. Ileana tilted her head, listening to a sound only she could hear. There is a gathering in one of the arboretums, she said. It is not part of your official schedule, but you may find it interesting. What's happening there? Yarrick asked. Nothing formal, Ileana replied. Just our citizens sharing their experiences, their thoughts. It is a place where we practice openness. Alec nodded. Let's see it. They followed her through another set of corridors until they arrived at the arboretum. It was unlike anything Alec had ever seen. A vast, open space filled with glowing plants that emitted soft pulses of light. Streams of what looked like liquid crystal flowed through the ground, creating a gently rippling sound. Zathri of all ages sat on cushions or walked among the flora, their conversations blending into a harmonious murmur. Everyone just talks? Yarrick asked. They share, Ileana said. There are no formal speeches here. It is a space where all voices are equal. Alec and Yarrick stepped cautiously into the space, taking in the scene. A small group of Zathri sat nearby, discussing something in their melodic language. Another pair stood by a glowing tree, their hands lightly touching its surface as the light shifted with their movements. One of the Zathri, noticing the newcomers, approached. He was taller than Ileana, his glowing skin tinged with a faint silver hue. You must be the humans I've heard about. Alec extended a hand. I'm Alec. This is Yarrick. We're here to learn. The Zathri glanced at the outstretched hand, then placed his own gently over Alec's, as if unsure how to replicate the gesture. I am Diath. Welcome to the Arboretum. What are you all talking about? Yarrick asked. Everything, Diath said. Our lives, our hopes, our struggles. It is a space for reflection. Alec glanced at Ileana, who had stepped aside to let them engage. How often do you do this? he asked. Whenever we feel it is needed, Diath said. There is no schedule, only the desire to connect. Yarrick rubbed his chin. It's a different approach. Back home, we usually stick to formal meetings or private conversations. This is more communal. Diath nodded, his glowing skin catching the light. It is how we maintain understanding. We believe that by sharing, we grow closer. Alec and Yarrick stayed for a while longer, listening to the Zathri share their thoughts and occasionally offering their own. They didn't speak much, but their presence was acknowledged and welcomed. It was a strange, peaceful experience. As they left the arboretum, Alec turned to Yarrick. What did you think? Yarrick shrugged. I'm not much for sitting around talking, but it felt genuine, not forced. Maybe we could learn something from it. Maybe we could, Alec agreed. Ileana, walking beside them, glanced at Alec with a thoughtful expression. You have listened well tonight. Perhaps this is how your story begins, not with declarations or plans, but with quiet understanding. Alec smiled. I think I can live with that. The glow of the Arboretum's crystalline plants had faded into memory as Alec and Yarrick walked the station's dimly lit corridors. Unlike the brightly illuminated common spaces, these side passages were quieter, more subdued, their walls shimmering faintly as though containing distant stars. Yarrick broke the silence. You know, I wasn't sure what to expect from this trip, but they're not what I thought they'd be. Alec glanced over. What did you think they'd be like? Yarrick shrugged. Distant. Hard to read. Maybe even cold. But they're different. Not human, obviously, but there's something about the way they carry themselves. It's almost calming. Ileana especially, Alec agreed. She's so deliberate in everything she does. It's like she's constantly thinking 3 steps ahead. Yeah, Yarrick said, his voice quieter now. It's impressive. As they turned a corner, they found themselves in an observation lounge. This one was smaller than the first they'd visited, with only a few translucent chairs scattered near the viewing panels. The stars beyond the glass seemed closer here, their light more intense. Alec sat down in one of the chairs, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes I wonder what they really think of us, Alec said after a pause. Do they see us as equals? Or just another species to observe? Does it matter? Yarrick asked, leaning against the railing. We're here, aren't we? We're talking. That's more than we've done with a lot of others. Alec nodded slowly. True, but I'd like to think that we're more than just visitors. That maybe we can offer something meaningful in return. Before Yarrick could respond, a faint sound came from the hallway. They both turned, and moments later Ileana appeared in the doorway. Her luminous presence seemed to fill the room, the faint amber glow of her skin casting soft patterns on the walls. I thought I might find you here, she said, stepping into the lounge. I wanted to thank you both for your participation today. The Arboretum gathering was different with you present. Different in a good way? Alec asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. Ileana inclined her head. Yes. You bring a perspective that is unfamiliar to my people. It is refreshing. Yarrick gestured toward one of the chairs. Want to join us? For a moment, Ileana seemed to hesitate. Then she moved gracefully to one of the seats and lowered herself into it. I will. The 3 of them sat in silence for a while, the stars beyond the window providing a gentle backdrop. Eventually, Yarrick spoke. You said earlier that your people don't tell stories the way we do. But do you have anything similar? Some kind of shared experience or tradition? We have songs, Ileana replied. Not like your music, but harmonic expressions of our thoughts and emotions. When we come together, we share these harmonies. It is not a narrative in the way you might think, but it binds us nonetheless. That's fascinating, Alec said. Would it be possible to hear one sometime? Ileana's amber eyes flickered slightly. Perhaps. If you are open to it, I will arrange for you to experience a harmony. Yarrick nodded. We'd appreciate that. It might help us understand your culture better. There was another moment of quiet, and then Ileana turned her gaze toward Alec. You spoke earlier of stories giving your people meaning, of finding connections in the midst of chaos. I wonder, do you ever feel lost in those stories? As though you are searching for something you cannot name. Alec blinked at the question. I think we all feel that way sometimes. Stories help us make sense of things, but they don't always provide all the answers. They just help us keep going. Ileana tilted her head, as though considering his words carefully. Perhaps that is why your presence here is so unique. You are willing to walk a path without knowing where it leads. Yarrick chuckled. That's one way of putting it. Humans tend to leap first. Figure it out later. Not always, Alex said, giving Yarrick a sideways look. But we do tend to take risks. We're not afraid to explore, even if it means we stumble along the way. Ileana's expression softened. And it is in those stumbles, I think, that we find something new. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Ileana asked about Earth's various climates and ecosystems, and Alec and Yarrick described the diversity of their homeworld. They talked about everything from Earth's oceans and forests to the bustling cities and remote wilderness. Ileana listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed a deep sea. Here's something comforting about knowing that so many different things can thrive there. As the conversation wound down, Ileana rose from her chair. I will let you rest now. We have a full day ahead tomorrow. Yarrick gave her a small nod. Thanks for stopping by. I should thank you, Ileana replied. Your presence here is more meaningful than you may realize. With that, she turned and left the lounge, her glowing form vanishing down the corridor. Once she was gone, Yarrick leaned back in his chair, letting out a low whistle. Well, that was unexpected. What do you mean? Alec asked. She's not just curious about us, Yarrick said, his voice thoughtful. She's starting to trust us. I don't think that happens easily for them. Good, Alec said, standing and stretching. That's what we came here for. Yarrick gave him a half-smile. It's what you came here for. I just keep you from tripping over yourself. Alec chuckled. And you're doing a fine job of it. They both laughed softly, the tension of the day easing as they prepared to head back to their quarters. The station's corridors stretched out before them, quiet and inviting, the faint glow of the walls guiding their way. As they walked, Alec couldn't help but feel a small spark of optimism. They were starting to connect, starting to understand. And maybe, just maybe, they were on the verge of something extraordinary. Alec and Yarrick walked through the sprawling chambers of Keithel Station, their steps unhurried as they took in the surroundings. By now, the once surreal environment had begun to feel familiar, even welcoming. The luminous crystals and gentle music no longer felt like strange alien elements, but rather a natural part of their day-to-day experience. Yarrick glanced at Alec as they approached a series of doorways, each one carved into the crystalline walls. So, what's on the schedule today? More discussions, or are we just winging it? Alec smirked. Not winging it. Ileana wanted us to visit one of their communal workshops. She said it would give us a better understanding of how the Zathri create together. Creating what, exactly? Yarrick asked. I'm not entirely sure, Alec admitted. Art, structures, harmonies, maybe all of the above. It's more about the process than the end result. Yarrick grunted, his expression neutral. Sounds interesting. When they reached the designated room, Ileana was already there, waiting. Her glowing form stood out against the shimmering walls, and her amber eyes lit up as she saw them. Alec. Yarrick. I am pleased you came. Alec inclined his head politely. Thank you for inviting us. We're curious to see how your people work together. Ileana gestured for them to follow her inside. The room was open and bright, with crystalline tables arranged in a loose circle. Groups of Zathri worked quietly, their hands moving gracefully as they shaped translucent materials into intricate forms. Some of the creations glowed softly, shifting colors as they took shape. Alec watched closely as a Zathri artist traced patterns in the air, their fingers leaving trails of light that solidified into a delicate lattice. How does that work? He asked. Ileana stepped closer to the table, her movement smooth and deliberate. It is an interplay of thought, emotion, and material. We project our intentions into the crystal matrices and they respond by forming what we envision. Yarrick leaned in to get a better look. So, it's like sculpting with your mind? Not entirely, Ileana replied. It requires a balance. Intent alone will not create something stable. We must align our emotions, our focus, and our understanding of the material's natural structure. It is both an art and a discipline. Alec glanced at Yarrick, who shrugged. Looks complicated, Yarrick said. It can be, Ileana agreed. But once you understand the principles, it becomes second nature. Alec's curiosity got the better of him. Would it be possible for us to try? Ileana tilted her head, her eyes thoughtful. It may be challenging as you do not share our empathic connection to the crystals. But there may be a way. She moved to a smaller table and retrieved a set of crystalline rods. Handing one to each of them, she explained, these are attuned to simpler patterns. If you focus on a basic shape, something you can clearly picture, it may respond. Alec held the rod cautiously, feeling a faint warmth in his hand. What kind of shape should we start with? A sphere, Ileana suggested. Something simple, yet complete. Yarrick raised an eyebrow but said nothing as he studied the rod. The two men stood side by side, concentrating on the task at hand. Alec closed his eyes, imagining a perfect sphere, a smooth, seamless shape, free of imperfections. He could feel the rod warming slightly, a subtle pulse that seemed to echo his thoughts. When he opened his eyes, a faintly glowing sphere hovered before him, not quite solid, but not entirely insubstantial either. It shifted slightly as if waiting for further instruction. "I think I did it," Alec said, surprised. Yarrick frowned at his own rod, which emitted only a faint flicker of light. "Mine's not doing anything." "Perhaps you are overthinking it," Ileana suggested gently. "Try to focus less on the outcome and more on the feeling of creating." Yarrick gave her a skeptical look but took a breath and tried again. This time, a faint sphere began to form, wobbling uncertainly before stabilizing. "Ha," he said. "Guess it just takes a bit of patience." Alec watched the two glowing shapes and then looked at Ileana. "How do you use this kind of creation in your society? Is it mostly for art, or does it have practical applications too?" "It serves many purposes," Ileana explained. "We create not just for aesthetic reasons, but also to construct our living spaces, our tools, even our vessels. By harmonizing our thoughts and emotions, we ensure that everything we make aligns with our needs and values." Yarrick smirked. "That's a pretty efficient system. No waste, no excess." "Indeed," Ileana said. "And by sharing the process, we strengthen our bonds with one another. The act of creation becomes a form of connection." Alec considered her words, then set down the rod. "It's a fascinating way of thinking. On Earth, we often approach creation from a very individual perspective, artists working alone in their studios, engineers designing systems in isolated labs. The idea of blending creativity and community like this is, well, it's not something we're used to. Perhaps it is something you might explore," Ileana said. "Your people's capacity for storytelling could lend itself well to collaborative creation." Yarrick chuckled. "We'd have to get over our habit of arguing about every little detail first." "That is part of the process," Ileana said, a faint smile on her lips. "From discord can come understanding." Alec glanced at Yarrick, who shrugged again, his usual expression of calm amusement. "I suppose there's something to be learned here." They continued to observe and occasionally participate as the Zathari worked, gradually gaining a deeper appreciation for the interconnected nature of their creations. By the time they left the workshop, the experience had left an impression on both men. Walking back through the corridors, Alec glanced at his friend. "So, what do you think? Worth the trip?" Yarrick gave him a sidelong glance. "I'm still not much of an artist. But yeah, it was interesting. I'll admit I didn't expect to learn this much." "And the Zathari?" Alec asked. "They're surprising," Yarrick said, his voice thoughtful. "I'm starting to see why you're so fascinated by them. There's something about the way they approach life. It's not just about survival or power. It's about connection. That's not something you see every day." Alec nodded, his steps slowing as they approached their quarters. "I feel the same way. This isn't just about diplomacy. It's about understanding. And I think we're getting there." Yarrick gave him a rare smile. "Guess we'll see how much we can learn before we head back." "Yeah," Alec said, a hint of optimism in his voice. "Let's keep going." Alec and Yarrick were seated in a small meeting chamber, their chairs angled toward a large, circular window that offered a panoramic view of the station's central hub. The crystalline structures glowed softly, casting pale reflections across their faces. Ileana sat across from them, her luminous skin adding an ethereal warmth to the room. "This has been an unusual mission," Yarrick said, folding his arms. "Not what I expected, I'll admit." Ileana tilted her head, her amber eyes meeting his. "And what did you expect?" "Stiff negotiations. Formal handshakes. A lot of talk with very little understanding," Yarrick replied. "But that's not what we found." "Indeed," Alec agreed. "The way you approach things here, everything from your art to your decision-making, it's not something we anticipated. It's almost as if your entire culture is built on collaboration rather than competition." Ileana considered his words for a moment. "And you find this surprising?" "Not surprising, exactly," Alec said, his tone thoughtful. "But it's different from what we're used to. Humans tend to struggle for their place in the world. We fight to be heard, to succeed. What you have here feels more balanced." Yarrick leaned back in his chair, gesturing toward the window. "Even the station itself reflects that. It's not just a building. It's like a living organism." "It is," Ileana said. "We see ourselves as part of a greater whole. Our structures, our art, our relationships, they are all interconnected. It is not just our way, it is who we are." There was a pause as the three of them sat in reflective silence. Alec finally broke it. "Ileana, can I ask you something more personal?" Her glowing eyes focused on him. "Of course. Do you ever feel separate? From the collective harmony, I mean." Do you ever feel like you want something different, something more individual? Ileana's expression softened and she hesitated before answering. There are times, she admitted. When I hear your stories, your songs, I begin to wonder what it might be like to experience the world as you do. To find meaning not just in harmony, but in discovery. In the unexpected. Yarrick smirked. Sounds like we're rubbing off on you. Perhaps, she said, a faint smile crossing her lips. But I believe that is the purpose of these exchanges, to learn from one another. Alec nodded. It's mutual. We're learning a lot from you two. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. Ileana turned her head slightly, listening to an internal message only she could hear. There is a gathering in the Arboretum, she said. Would you like to attend? Another one? Yarrick asked. This one is different, she said. It is not about formalities or structured dialogue. It is a moment to share experiences, to connect. You might find it enlightening. Alec glanced at Yarrick, who gave a noncommittal shrug. Sure, Alec said. Why not? Ileana rose gracefully from her seat, and the two men followed her out of the chamber. They walked through the station's luminous corridors, their reflections casting faint patterns on the crystalline walls. The Arboretum appeared before them, bathed in soft, glowing light. Zathari citizens were already gathered, seated on cushions or standing near the glowing plants that formed the space's natural architecture. As they entered, a subtle shift in the atmosphere occurred. The conversations became quieter, more thoughtful. Ileana led them to a cluster of Zathari who seemed to be in deep discussion. One of them, a tall figure with silver-tinged skin, greeted Ileana warmly. Welcome, Ileana, he said, then turned to the humans. And these must be your guests. Alec and Yarrick, Ileana said. They are here to observe and, if they wish, to join. Alec extended his hand, and the Zathari regarded it curiously before placing his own over Alec's. I am Alrin, he said. It is a pleasure to meet you. Likewise, Alec replied. The group made room for them, and soon Alec and Yarrick found themselves seated among the Zathari, listening as the conversation unfolded. The topic shifted between personal experiences, philosophical musings, and the sharing of harmonies. The Zathari spoke of their connection to the station, to each other, and to the larger network of their society. Alec observed how easily they communicated, not through debates or arguments, but through a seamless flow of ideas. He glanced at Yarrick, who was listening intently, his usual stoic expression showing a hint of curiosity. One of the Zathari turned to Yarrick. You have been quiet. Do you find this difficult to follow? Yarrick shook his head. Not difficult, just different. I'm used to more structured discussions. This is more like a conversation you'd have with friends. That is precisely the point, the Zathari replied. To engage as equals, without the constraints of formality. It allows for a deeper understanding. Yarrick considered this. It's definitely a change of pace, but I can see why it works for you. The Zathari smiled faintly, then turned their attention back to the larger group. As the gathering continued, Alec felt a growing sense of connection, not just with the Zathari, but with the moment itself. He realized that this was what he had been searching for all along. A genuine exchange of ideas and experiences. No pretense, no agendas. Just people, human and Zathari, coming together. When the gathering finally began to wind down, Ileana rose and gestured for Alec and Yarrick to follow her. They walked back through the corridors, the station's gentle light guiding their way. What did you think? Ileana asked, her tone curious. Yarrick rubbed the back of his neck. It was different, in a good way. I'm not sure I could live like that all the time, but I can see the value in it. Alec nodded. It felt real. Not like the usual diplomatic meetings or planned cultural exchanges. Just people talking, sharing. It's refreshing. Ileana smiled. A soft, knowing expression. That is the purpose of these gatherings. To remind us that beyond titles and roles, we are simply beings seeking connection. As they reached their quarters, Alec turned to Ileana. Thank you for inviting us. I think I understand your people a little better now. It is I who should thank you, she replied. Your presence here has opened my eyes to new possibilities. Your stories, your ways of seeing the world, they have shown me that there is more than one path to understanding. Yarrick gave a slight nod. We're not so bad, huh? No, Ileana said with a faint smile. Not bad at all. With that, she turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving Alec and Yarrick standing outside their quarters. Well, Yarrick said, opening the door. Guess we're not doing so badly after all. Alec laughed quietly as he followed his friend inside. Not bad at all.